Okay, welcome to today's webinar provided by Solarplaza and SASIA as a prequel for our solar trade mission in Saudi Arabia that will take place from 14 to 18 September in Riyadh. In the coming hour, we will learn a lot more about the market status and potential of solar in Saudi Arabia. My name is Tom van Dorp. I'm working at Solarplaza since 2010 and currently I'm responsible for our upcoming trade mission and conference in Saudi Arabia. I will be moderating this session today. In a minute I will give you a short introduction of our company Solarplaza and our upcoming event in Saudi Arabia. But first I want to give you an idea about what to expect in the coming hour. I will quickly run you through today's agenda to do this. Today's first speaker will be Browning Rockwell of SASIA. He will give an introduction on the Saudi Arabian solar market. Thereafter our keynote speaker is Jigar Shah. He will share his vision on how to create solar wealth in Saudi Arabia. And we will end the webinar with an in-depth panel discussion with 4 experts on the Saudi Arabian solar market. This session is expected to come to an end in about 1 hour. To give you an idea about who is with you in this virtual conference room, I've composed a sheet with the statistics of the attendees of today's webinar. With you, about 300 others are joining us to learn more on the Saudi Arabian solar market. As you can see, companies from Europe, North America, and of course the Middle East are represented best. The level of the audience is high with a very good percentage of decision makers. I think this underlines how important the Saudi Arabian market is considered to become by the international solar market. I want to share a few practical notes with you. The sheets of the presentations and recordings will be available for download afterwards. You can ask questions at any point throughout the webinar via the chat box at the right of your screen. There will be time for questions after every speech. And in the panel discussion at the end, we will address further questions. We have a lot of attendees, as I just mentioned, so we might not be able to address all questions, but any unanswered questions can still be directed to us. Of course, we will try to cover as many questions as we can. If you have any technical problems, don't hesitate to drop your issues in the chat box. There is a technical support desk available who will try to help you to solve the problems immediately. Since we've reached you with the promotion of this webinar, I assume you all know Solarplaza and of course SASIA. Still, for the people who are not completely aware of our activities, a short introduction. We're in a global information platform for the solar industry founded in 2004. Our mission is empowering professionals in solar business development by building the most valuable solar network. And yeah, we've done over 50 conferences and trade missions globally, so we're quite experienced on that. Quick overview of our track records. You can look it up later. I just wanted to spend 1 or 2 minutes on why we organize a trade mission and what are the big benefits of joining such an event. We've organized solar trade missions to China, India, Taiwan, but also more recently to Chile, Mexico, Indonesia, Brazil, and Saudi Arabia last year as well. And we've become huge believers in the value of taking a group of international business-minded people to get a hands-on, in the field, no-nonsense taste potentially interesting market like Saudi Arabia. We've defined 5 key arguments for people to join a trade mission like this. First of all, you get a real feel of the country. You get to meet the local experts, key stakeholders and decision makers face to face in dedicated meetings on the office of those stakeholders. And you will learn all there is to know about the solar market at the source. And highly important, of course, you will connect with the local industry through the 2-day conference, which is called Desert Solar, that is included in the trade mission. And people often underestimate the value of the group with who you're traveling a whole week. Don't forget it's not only about who we are visiting and meeting with, but also who you are traveling with. These are all like-minded professionals that are looking to start or expand their business in the same market as you are. The next slides give an impression of our first trade mission to Saudi Arabia, which was organized last November, also together with SASIA. And some highlights were the visits to Saudi Aramco, Kager and AEC, but also a finance workshop and obviously a conference day where we had over 60% of Saudi Arabian participants. A couple of testimonials to show how it was a good event. Look it up later if you're interested. And yeah, a quick overview of the program for this year's trade mission. Highlights are again a visit to the Saudi Aramco headquarters in Dhahran, but also a meeting with Kager we're planning. Additional to last year, we want to meet with SEC, which an entity that has become more and more important, the Saudi electricity company. Of course, we have a financing workshop, and this year, instead of last year, we have a 2-day conference, including an exhibition, and we expect over 200 high-level participants to join us there. Again, we expect over 60% of these companies to be Saudi companies. Yeah, become part of this event, I would say. Together we can make a strong voice for solar in Saudi Arabia, and there are several ways to become part of this event. Just don't hesitate to contact me or Browning to become a trademanship participant. If you're new to the market, become a partner or a sponsor or exhibitor. There are several options, and we're happy to discuss your involvement. Now I want to introduce Browning Rockwell. He's the founder of the Saudi Arabia Solar Industry Association, which is called SASIA, and our organizing partner of the Solar Trade Mission and the Dutch Desert Solar Conference. Browning has worked in the MENA and GCC region for more than a quarter century. His extensive experience with renewable energy includes market energy strategy, government liaison, proposal development, partnership identification, project management, and solar advisory services. Browning, I want to give you the word, and I'm going to make you the presenter. So if you accept to share your screen, we can see your slides, and
okay,
you can start representing.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is Browning Rockwell. I'm the executive director of the Saudi Arabian Solar Industry Association. I'm glad to see we have such a broad and diversified geographically and otherwise audience attending this event. I'm sure this is a topic that's on a lot of people's minds after listening about for many years of activity in Saudi. This first slide I'm showing you is one that I've used quite often, and it's a bit of a humorous take on what's happening in the market. But I think more importantly, we can take a quick look at if many people read the headlines this week from Bloomberg about Saudi Arabian policy shifts seeking solar through Aramco. And you know, this is obviously taking people, I wouldn't say by surprise, but just a shift in the direction and pace perhaps of the market. But I think it's a positive step, and I see in many ways. You know, one of the challenges that we've been facing, and again, this is another slide I've used quite often in presentations, and it really has to do with technology adoption and other issues. The slide developed by Gardner Group, but you know, it's about managing expectations in this market. Some people have been in the market for the past 4 years, since the early days of K-Care announcements. Others are just coming into the market now. And you know, we're following this path where we have this peak of expectations, and we have this trough of disillusionment. And it's very easy. It's kind of hard. Different companies are in different places on that curve. So it's a challenging situation when speaking to all of you, that as many of you are stepping into the market for the first time now. Others have been watching the market for several years. Some have set up operations and are working and have a different perspective. But you know, the key theme across everybody is they're all interested in this large and developing market. But it is a market that's going to require a little bit of time and a little bit of patience. But it's a market that is evolving, and I would also say that aside from the news of Aramco coming out, you know, we have to look around the edges that there are lots of other activity occurring in Saudi Arabia right now, be it in off-grid development projects. There's lots of interest in that area. Many of you have maybe heard about their recent Riyadh Metro project, where there's a large-scale solar component, and that project is being developed. There's just numerous developments around the country, both on the commercial side, on the private sector side. I see a lot of uptake on the individual interest from 4 years ago to today. The knowledge, the urban myths of solar are disappearing, and a lot more of a knowledge base is being developed in the market. So we do see, you know, progress in the market, and hopefully an organization like the SASIA has been a part of that. We have weathered the storm, I like to say, of starting out and when the market was really in its infancy, and we continue to have these events with Solarplaza and other groups as a way of continuing to keep to ignite the market, to engage the world and the community within Saudi. I think we've been very successful. Our events have gone from small gatherings of 50 to 60 people to over close to 300. In today's event, we have, again, close to 300 plus participants. So, you know, we are achieving our goal. And just really quickly, for those of you, and this is not an infomercial, but for those, please visit our website, take a look at what we are doing as an organization. I think there's a lot of information that is available on the site for free that you can go in. We post a lot of research reports, presentations. We track what's going on in the market, but we also have tracking across the entire region, because I know many of you in the audience are not only looking at Saudi, but looking at the entire region as a market. Each one of them being a very different market. You know, we have a broad membership base, as you can see from the slide. We have also developed something called Solar GCC Alliance, which is an attempt to really integrate what we did in Saudi Arabia across the entire GCC and Jordan and Morocco to kind of create a network of community of interest so that every location has its own identity, its own I guess, formula for success in solar. There's eyes have been towards Jordan recently with a lot of activity there. And I think we'll begin to see these green sprouts occurring in other places. But hopefully today we can have, through our panel of experts and some other commentary from Jigar Shah, some insights and just some perspective looking back. I think Jigar, I read his book last weekend, Creating Climate Wealth, and I was taken by, you know, it was a story that took up time. It's not an overnight success. When we look at any of these markets, 4 years is a relatively short period of time. We've seen solar grow. From 2003, it was a $5 billion industry. Today, it's a $93 billion over 10-plus years. This is the same story. It's been unfold, whether it's in Saudi, Oman, Kuwait. There are smaller markets, but they will take time to develop and emerge. But the key theme is that you have to keep working at it. And I think as we listen to what Jigar has to say, we'll come to realize very quickly that it took many years and a lot of hard work and a lot of measuring twice and cutting once before they were able to figure out the right model. But they did prove to be successful, and as a model that was adopted. And I think one of the topics today we hope to look at is what are some of the takeaways and what is the solar business model or models that might evolve in Saudi Arabia. We know for a fact that the industry is aligned properly if we want to look at where things are right now in the globe, and we know that the solar business model is there. We have declining module prices. We have a proven record of 136 gigawatts of installation through 2013, and in many markets we have imminent grid parity, which is driving. So we know the technology is there. I think there are some other issues that we need to look at, and hopefully this discussion today. So with that said, I know we're short on time. I'd like to take this moment to introduce Jigar Shah. Jigar, who I've known for many years, actually I have to say Jigar was the individual who actually got me into the solar business. I met Jigar probably in 2006 when he was moving at great speed with SunEdison. He was the founder and I guess the leader and visionary for the early days of SunEdison. And I do take a look at his book and you'll get some insight into things he's been doing. But Jigar has been responsible for shaping, a big part of shaping the early days of the solar industry in the United States, and has continued to be a great spokesperson for it. And so we've communicated over the years since my first days of working with him. We've kept in touch, and he's been very good about keeping in touch about what's going on in Saudi Arabia, what's going on in the Middle East. He's visited the market, and he's not without his concerns or issues related to the developments there. But I think he's always remained positive. But what I'd like to sort of just lay out in the introduction here is that in his book he outlines the business principle regarding unlocking opportunities for impact. Profit and impact can go hand in hand and even reinforce each other, and that breakthrough growth can be achieved without technology and product innovation. How can this be applied to creating solar wealth in Saudi Arabia? And I hope that Jigar can give us a few thoughts on that, and I'll have a follow-up question for him, and then we're going to open up to the panel for further discussion.
Thanks, Browning. Can you guys see our screen?
Fine.
Perfect. Well, thanks everybody for being on this webinar. I think it's really important to find out what's happening in Saudi Arabia. It could be one of the largest markets in the world. I think it's important to realize why Saudi Arabia is looking at this, and the reason is because the world's critical resources are inextricably linked. Energy, water is a huge issue in Saudi Arabia, materials, land, and food. And what you're finding is that in the Middle East, and Saudi Arabia is really the center of this, they're charging themselves 75 cents per million BTU for natural gas, $4 a barrel for light crude oil, $2 a barrel for heavy crude oil, 8.7 cents per gallon for diesel fuel. And so you can imagine that they're losing billions of dollars of revenues per year. And their water usage for burning all of these fuels is 1 trillion liters per year. So you can imagine that it's actually a real challenge that they have to do this. On top of that, for most of the GCC countries, and Saudi Arabia is no different, electricity is sold at a price that doesn't fully cover the utilities costs, and so many of the utility companies like Saudi Electric Company have losses every year. And so one of the things that's happening is that Saudi Arabia and the UAE, this is a chart that I just had locally for the UAE and Kuwait, are actually using up their own gas and their own oil, so they have a lot less of it to sell externally. And then on the electricity price level, for Kuwait, for instance, I mean, their costs are running 12, 14 cents a kilowatt hour, which is certainly within the realm of grid parity with solar, but they're charging their locals, 2 cents, 3 cents, 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And when you think about the reason why I think the depths of despair and the heights of sort of a bubble, and then now sort of getting into a productive range, all of the Gulf states have really announced big solar plants, from Bahrain to Kuwait to Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and then the UAE. And more importantly, they've invested heavily in innovation. So you've got MIST and KAUST and PAST, where they've had PhDs and others come in to really teach them about what is available and teach many of their interested students locally what's available in this marketplace and how they might be able to add to the body of knowledge in this area. So I think what will cause the Middle East to move is really there's a pilot project for now. So Saudi Arabia has actually completed pilot projects using very politically influential contractors, which I think is critical. Qatar has got their big, huge 200 megawatt solar announcement that's coming, I think, June 8th. And Jordan, the first projects have been deployed. And as many of you know, solar is now mature. So at $1.40 a watt installed, sort of solar costs will come down slightly every year, but nobody's expecting solar to go from $1.40 a watt down to 70 cents a watt in the next 2 years. And so you're starting to see this sort of asymptotic point, which I think ironically actually gives people comfort in this part of the world. I mean, they're not actually looking for catching a falling knife. They actually like seeing stability in prices, other countries going first, and a real maturity to the marketplace. And I think that Browning's cartoon is a good one, and this is sort of my cartoon, which is, and this is why obviously they're looking at solar. No matter how you slice it, the world's energy use, that small brown sphere that's labeled world energy use on the left, but solar really is the Mac Daddy. I mean, that's where most of the energy is coming from and in the future will come from. And they all know that. There's the one thing that you'll find in Saudi Arabia, but also in other countries in the GCC, is that there's nobody who is uneducated there. They've heard it all. They've heard all the pitches, etc. They're really just in a planning cycle to figure out exactly how they want to uniquely roll out the technology in their country. But the other thing I think that's important is that logic alone really won't work. OPEC is losing market share to the U.S. and Russia and needs to meet local demand with other fuels to increase exports. That's a logical argument, absolutely has been made, but won't actually be the reason why they pull the trigger. The Middle East has a water problem, and fossil fuel electricity generation is one of the largest users of water. Again, not the reason they're going to pull the trigger. The third one's they have a young population. They need job creation. Renewables produce 3 times the jobs of the fossil fuel sector per million BTU. And that actually might be one of the reasons they pull the trigger, because it's too damn expensive for what they did last time. After the Arab Spring, Saudi Arabia spent an additional $20 billion a year in public works projects to give people more jobs, and they just can't afford to keep doing that all the time. And one of the opportunities is the Saudi Electric Company pays less than 3% interest on its total debt, so they could actually co-invest on some of these plants And at that interest rate, solar PV is less than 5 cents a kilowatt hour in Saudi Arabia today. And the job creation numbers, you guys may have seen these already, but this is another chart that's come down recently. So, I think that some of the markers, and Browning and I think the panel will talk a little bit about this on the webinar, but some of the markers, Saudi Arabia has to produce a goal that's more near term. So a 2020 goal, not one out to 2035. They have to make investments from the Sovereign Wealth Fund into solar PV projects around the world. So for instance, the Kuwait Investment Authority has been actually investing in solar projects around the world. And that's a good sign because they're educating themselves at the Sovereign Wealth Fund level. My sense is because they subsidize their power to their people that you're going to see sort of a feed-in tariff-like model that comes through, and that's something that we should be watching for. And I think it's important to note that I think the shift away from KCare towards Saudi Aramco is a hugely important sign. KCare, I think, was there to really study what could be done and educate the kingdom on what could be done, but it's not a company with the long history that Saudi Aramco has around giving the responsibility to meet the goal. And with that, I really want to thank you for your time.
Okay, Jigar. Well, thank you very much for that overview. I have just one question, maybe two, that I'd like to just pose to you, and then we'll move on to the panelists. But given we know that in your book you reference Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point, and this is always an interesting business phenomena that's he's made millions of dollars through. But what do we see? What are the lessons learned from SunEdison, and how can they be applied to Saudi Arabia? Because in your book you speak about the service-based model versus product-based model, and is there a new and better business model for Saudi Arabia? Because I think it's a known fact that the U.S. model of tax equity and the European model of straightforward feed-in tariffs is really not going to apply. It's going to have to, some other model is going to evolve here. But is there an opportunity for the service-based model that you highlight in your book, and you made SunEdison so successful? Is there an opportunity to create some hybrid of that in Saudi Arabia, or can we just use that theme to help to build out the market?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the costs of solar are getting so low that even with the subsidized costs of power in Saudi Arabia, you're seeing that solar can compete favorably. I mean, it's one of the things that happened in Chile. I mean, Chile is moving forward on 100 megawatts of solar being constructed this month, and what's happened is that Chile refused to sign a power purchase agreement, but what they're doing is actually selling the power merchant right into the power grid, because the power prices are high enough. And I think you're seeing that in Saudi Arabia now, is that there are a lot of people in Saudi Arabia that are using straight up diesel fuel to power some of their remote sites. You're seeing a lot of folks who are paying 5, 6, 7, 8 cents a kilowatt hour. And at that price point, there are a lot of folks who might just provide a power purchase agreement at the customer level. And that's happening now, which I think is something that does two things. One is that it actually gives the folks attending the mission some choice. But the second thing is it also puts pressure onto the Saudi Electric Company and Saudi Aramco, because now that individual customers in Saudi Arabia can actually move to solar without asking their permission, people are like, oh, crap, maybe I should put a policy in place.
All right. Well, thank you, Jigar. Well, just before we let Jigar go and move on to the panelists, I just want to thank Jigar for taking time. He's always in much demand, and he was kind enough to participate in this event. But I would like to recommend that those in the audience who can quickly go on Amazon and go to creatingclimatewealth.co and do get a copy of his book. It's a quick read, but it's got some interesting insights and a story of a solar pioneer who started off with kind of a dream and built on that, and has really achieved some great things. And I hope that we'll have the equivalent of a Jigar Shah will evolve in Saudi Arabia. So with that said, Tom, why don't you take and introduce the panelists, and we'll get into the questions.
Thanks.
Thank you, Browning. Before I will start to introduce the other panelists, I want you the audience all to participate a little bit I'm going to launch a poll, which is appearing in your screen right now. I just want you to read through the question and answer it as honest and good as possible. And after a couple of minutes, I will just show the results, and we get an impression about what the people in the audience think about the growth of solar capacity in Saudi Arabia. So let me then introduce the first panelist, which is Abdullah Jali. He's the Business Development Director at Dar Al Riyadh Group, which is one of the leading full-service engineering companies in Saudi Arabia with over 3,000 employees. In the past, Abdullah worked for renowned companies as General Electric and Saudi Aramco. At GE, he did marketing and business development projects on fuel, oil, and gas, and as a commercial manager. And at Aramco, he was leading pre-qualifications of all Saudi Aramco contracts. His current company is exploring the solar market at the moment. The next speaker and panelist is Imtiaz Mahtab. He is Executive Vice President at Air Liquide for the MENA region. He has been actively involved in the development of the solar sector in the MENA region since 2011, working closely with regulators, investors, EPCs, universities, RD&D institutions, and others. It underlines the importance of his involvement in the advisory board of SASIA. Keith Boonen is an associate at Baker Botts, who has practiced in the Middle East since 2005. He's experienced in a number of project development sectors, and his clients have included both financial institutions and project sponsors. In the power sector, he's advised the Saudi Electricity Company on the development and financing of a number of power plant procured both under its IPP program and on an EPC basis. Like Imtiaz, Keith is also part of the advisory board of SASIA. The last panelist is Aaron Morrow. He's currently managing partner at Global Energy Analytics. His company delivers professional services and technology solutions in the renewable and clean energy markets. His experience in the clean energy space includes international market and project development experience and a deep understanding of renewable and distributed energy technologies, including solar. Browning, I want to publish now the results of the poll. You see it appear on your screen, if I'm correct, and we see that yeah, it is very mixed. Browning, maybe you can comment on this as first and then lead the panel discussion.
Yes, you know, just looking at this, it seems like there's a bit of pessimism in the market when we look at 2015, 100 megawatts. And you know, we're looking at the lowest percentage is 500 megawatts, given the ambitions of the different programs and announcements. You know, I can understand this feeling. I've got you know, you get conflicting messages with what we see in the news recently. But I would tend to you know, look maybe a little bit opposite on this. But I guess I'm always the optimist, and I've always been one to keep pushing this through. But I guess a question I would ask, and you know, given this poll where people are looking at no growth, or 37%, or I think, or more than 50% see that the market is going to be less than 250 megawatts by 2015, which is you know, the end of that's 18 months away. I would tend to say that it would be over 500 megawatts within 18 months. That's my own personal opinion, but I can understand this. But let me ask a question to the panelists. I'll move from this and go over, and this is probably an appropriate one. And I'll point this at Imtiaz. Imtiaz, who's been watching this for a long time. Imtiaz Mahatib. Imtiaz, can you just tell me, why has solar made so little progress in the Middle East? And I think that's what most people are asking. There's this, I guess, I think it's more of a people. I had a question from a journalist the other day saying, you know, there's a frustration level. I think that's more of confusion. But Imtiaz, tell me what you see, or have we made progress in the Middle East? Can you comment on that?
Thank you, Browning. I think this is an excellent question, which is, I hope I can answer it as crystal clear as Jigar has pointed out. I think we have to look at the underlying facts first. There were progress made in Saudi, more than people realize. If you look at first on the education sector, there are the universities such as KAUST and CACS. They have launched programs educating the students, which is key to have a sustaining program or sustaining sector going forward. So they have launched a lot of world-class R&D programs already, and it's in the making over the last few years. You have looked at there are a lot of manufacturing projects that are also launched in Saudi, specifically in the polysilicon side, and they're going to come into production in a year to come, which is going to also cement the development for this sector going forward. Of course, the likes as Aramco or Caxt, which is the let's say the the Bell lamp type of arm for Saudi. They have tested the panels at different desert conditions. So yes, the groundwork is there. Not last but least, KKR has done an intensive study on the different dynamics, different policies. So let's say all this work that has been done in Saudi definitely gives me the confidence that the country, the kingdom in itself, will launch a robust program, which will be much more sustaining than any part of the world that we have seen today. The second part, why it's so little and so less done, I mean, you have to look at the history of Saudi as well. I mean, typically in Saudi, it takes time because of they really want to make it very structural. If you look at their oil and gas downstream sector, it took them years. But if you look at, if anybody wants to visit Yambu or Jubail, you will see $1 billion infrastructure investment project is going on, and they haven't built overnight. It took them years and years to build it. So I assume that the similar approach would be taken in Saudi. First, they have done pilot. They set up the infrastructure. Then they have set up the, let's say, the set of a policy framework. And now, as you have mentioned, Aramco, the real, let's say, the doers is coming to the picture. If you look at all those things, I do see a bright future for Saudi going forward. So that's all I can say at this point.
Okay, thank you, Imtiaz. Abdullah, I have a quick question for you. Abdullah is representing, I think, two interesting things. He is ex-Aramco, so he has a lot of experience in a top-notch company. I think it's the showcase company of Saudi Arabia, but also he brings the youth of Saudi Arabia into this whole new solar question. And I'm also very pleased to see that his company has decided, or Riyadh decided, to take a serious look at this business. I met with the chairman of Riyadh several years ago, Prince Turki, and we were talking about this. My father had worked with him in 1970s when they first started out together, and I was just sort of mapping what had happened then and now, because they were building a business and not dissimilar from the solar business. But at the time he was telling us several years ago that he didn't see a positive trend in the market enough to get his organization behind this. But obviously, they're beginning to see this. Abdullah is on board. But Abdullah, I'd like to ask you a question. It says, does Saudi Arabia need to show leadership if solar is to gain traction in the Middle East? Or if so, do you believe they are? As a Saudi citizen and looking around, and you're now jumping into the middle of all this, what is your ground view of what's happening in the market right now in terms of growth and development?
Thank you, Browning. I think Saudi Arabia is taking a leadership position here in developing the solar energy landscape in the region, and what's happening right now with in the market and with KKR are just bumps in the road. In Saudi Arabia, we're notorious for taking our time in making decisions, and I think that's stemming out of the fact that we'd rather be late than sorry, and I think that's it's been the habit of Saudi Arabia project management and decision making. Things take too long. If you look at it now from all angles, definitely from where Jigar showed the numbers and Aaron talked about the growth potential and what's been happening, all indications are saying forward, and that's just one thing. Additionally, the King has made it clear to everybody that we want to invest in this, and this is the way forward. There is no chance for anybody else to push it back or not do it. So, so it's not suddenly going to disappear. It's just a matter of time before the decision is made, and I think there is no going back. Now, when it comes to the potential growth, we have the luxury in Saudi Arabia of affording the time and affording the debate and the delay of decisions because of the fuel landscape. Fuel has been very cheap for everybody. It's subsidized by the government at very low prices for gas and HFO or heavy fuel oil, and for diesel and for other fossil fuels. That makes people take a bit more relaxed view at the progress of solar. Eventually, people will have to move as production of fossil fuels, the cost increases and it goes up versus the cost of solar going down. I mean, now at prices of hydrocarbons decreasing sharply from today at about 6 cents, it could go, I'm sorry, 2 cents, it could go up to 6 cents in 2020. And versus solar, which is probably now at 3 cents per kilowatt hour to 2 cents and 10 cents in 2020. To me, all of these are indications that growth is coming. It's a matter of time. I'm looking at a couple of years. Maybe 2015, 2016 is probably the years that we will see a strong push towards growth of solar.
Thank you, Abdullah. Aaron, you've been coming and going to the Middle East, I think, since 2006, working on the early Masdar projects and coming back and forth. But you know, will there be a tipping point for solar in the Middle East, and what and when will it be? When will that be? Can you just kind of give us some ideas there? You've been involved in looking at lots of different business models and other issues. So can you comment on that? Hello?
Thank you, Browning. Yes, sorry, I've just been unmuted. Yeah, so I don't necessarily know if there's going to be a tipping point where, you know, the floodgates open, if you will. I think what you're going to see is you're going to start to see in the market, you know, people looking for areas where there's value for solar. And you're going to start to see, you know, sort of an end around, if you will, from the sort of centralized approach where people are going to start to say, you know, are there applications in off-grid where I can use solar to offset some risk or offset some costs. And then utilities might start to get involved and say, well, wait a minute, I can use some solar, you know, to offset some infrastructure investments, some transmission and distribution investments. And then you're going to start to see, you know, sort of the larger plants, you know, come online. And so, you know, I think what's going to be interesting is to watch how this rolls out. And again, you know, the approach that we're seeing now is sort of the let's put out an RFP for a big project, which, you know, gets a lot of excitement and gets everyone, you know, kind of interested. But I think, you know, you watch kind of at the fringes and you watch, you know, people looking for value and looking for ways to get value out of the solar. And as that starts to grow, that's going to be sort of the path. And I think that's what, you know, if you're watching the market, that's what you're really going to want to see. And as you see those indicators, you know, that's kind of maybe potentially the time to get in.
Okay, thank you. Keith, could you talk? You've been, your firm Baker Botts has been in the region for 20-some years. Have been in the energy business. You've watched a lot of things come and go. You know, what do you see? And this is a discussion that comes up in terms of what is the typical ownership structure of these solar projects going to be? I mean, I know that's kind of a crystal ball question, but this is an issue. Are they going to be government owned, or what are some of the things you think would work and make work in the region, having spent the time for many years there?
Well, I think the news that we've had this week in some respects has been very exciting. For some people, it's been a little bit depressing. But what we've got now is a real blank canvas where we can actually sit down and structure how we want this industry to work. Aramco have had huge success procuring their own IPPs, cogeneration. Some of those plants have provided electricity into the grid as well. And Aramco's IPP projects have typically involved a joint ownership between Aramco and a developer that comes in and builds. SEC, likewise, their IPPs have involved a split ownership structure. If we're looking at these initial round of projects, I know that when Dr. Babelli spoke at our conference earlier this year, he was saying that there was going to be an initial round of half a dozen projects that were either going to be in joint venture with SEC or Aramco. Those projects, I would expect, and as Aaron said, I think they're probably going to be quite opportunistic, and they're going to hit a need that I'd expect Aramco really have. And if Aramco have that real need, they may just want to go out and procure them as quickly as possible on an EPC basis and just have them owned by Aramco and then pass off the electricity either to one of their facilities or into the grid. But as we go further forward and we look to a much wider market, hopefully we're all fingers crossed hoping for something of a dispersed generation industry where people can go away and pitch IPP projects to against a feed-in tariff to whichever company ends up running the renewable energy program in the long term. Well, those IPPs, I guess they open up an awful lot of opportunities, and Saudi Arabia's current legal structure gives a lot of flexibility to do some very interesting things as far as ownership of the IPPs, the transfer of interest, assignments of revenues, structuring these projects so that they can all be taken out into the capital markets very quickly. I think the question for me is how quickly do we need to do it? Who's going to be providing the advice to the procuring authority in order to get the best possible solution? I've spoken before about the ways that we can structure this market. We can probably go into detail about that, and you all get very bored of listening to me for hours and hours talking about how we can use the capital markets. But there really is a blank canvas, and we can do what we want with these projects. But in the initial rounds, I don't think there'll be anything too exotic to come up. Is certainly my view.
Okay. Imtiaz, I'll circle back to you. I have a question from the audience here. It says, would we see a movement in the private sector, and also what would be the drivers, or are we talking only about development with government involvement for larger projects? I think, the individual wants to know, do you think there, as Aaron may have mentioned and alluded to, do you think we'll begin to see some private development as well?
Actually, that's an excellent question, and in the private side, the initiative has already started. I mean, if you today go to some in Riyadh or Jeddah, you will see that there's a small number of ESCOs, energy service companies, are emerging to work on the efficiency at the building level. So they are today looking at how to improve not only the efficiency of the way the building is constructed, but also how to integrate the solar panel for the usage. So yes, I mean, as Aaron mentioned, and I also take it from the kit, there will be opportunistic approach. I mean, if you look at also some companies that I've talked to in Saudi, they are construction companies. They are engaged in as you know very well, that there is a real need to develop city. There is one city not far from Jeddah has been recently announced who will require gigawatt level of power consumption. They are also looking at having their own production through the renewable energy sources. So yes, I do see in the next coming, let's say as the cost of technology of installing solar went down tremendously, we will see that that significant amount of businesses will look at that, be it on a standalone basis or integrating with their building. They will proceed on that.
All right, thank you, Imtiaz. Abdullah, I have a question for you about sort of human capital development. You know, with the push in the whole region for whether it's Saudiization, Emiratization, to develop local talent and local human resources, do you think that you know, we're recruiting the right people for the right jobs, or is Saudi facing a skills shortage in this industry? Is that impacting it? And also, what do you think the industry can do? This is not all about just selling product and services from around the world. I mean, companies coming in have to invest in Saudi. Do you think, what can the industry do, and where do you see the skills level in Saudi right now for the solar industry?
Saudi Arabia has been reactive versus proactive when it comes to developing manpower for future investments, and solar is definitely one of them. Last week in Washington, D.C., the Saudi government did a job fair for the graduates of King Abdullah, a scholarship program that sends students abroad. And students were curious about the thing that we're most curious about was growth for their jobs. Now, if you look at specific areas of the job market today, and we pick solar, for instance, people will be interested in the growth of solar. So the earlier question that you said for the audience, what's your growth anticipation of megawatts from solar? That's what the candidates are looking for in when they look for jobs. So they would take jobs in solar if they knew that there is certain growth. Now, Saudi Arabia has, to be fair, that over the last 3 years, we have seen serious dedication to training and education when it comes to special industrial segments of the market, including solar. And this is increasing, and recent studies by the Human Resources Development Fund in Saudi, assessing the quality of education and the graduates of the technical institutes in Saudi, indicating higher trends. International companies are looking for Saudi talent now more than ever. Definitely 2014 and 2013 saw the most aggressive search by international companies for Saudi talent. I think that foreign educated Saudi candidates are the best candidates for solar industry if it picks up, and the country will pick up within the next couple of years to train local talent. I just have a comment about what Keith mentioned earlier about Aramco. I don't see, from experience inside Aramco and Saudi Aramco projects, I don't see Aramco taking over the solar industry and providing power generation for the country. I think what they refer to when they say they have strong interest is two things. One, providing power for their consumption through solar. They're very interested in that. And number two is supporting whoever organization that will undertake this effort. But they have spread themselves thin when it comes to project management, and I highly doubt that they will take over the entire solar industry.
Well, thank you, Abdullah, for that insight. And I share with them, I don't know many of you know that, but I think there's 160,000 Saudis studying outside of Saudi Arabia in the U.S. and other markets right now. And there's I can only say from the inquiries I get on the SASIA website from undergraduate, graduate, and students are now in the workforce that are very interested in solar. I'm seeing an ever-increasing number of contacts from these people. So this is a very positive sign to me. I would like to direct a question now to Keith. This is one from the audience, and it's really dealing with an individual. He's saying it's not clear to me who is eligible to invest, and if the relevant tools are available. I understand there's discussion for PPA or feed-in tariff issue, but can we, as an international investor, develop and build a solar PV park in Saudi Arabia? This is, I know, an very open issue, but something, Keith, maybe you could speak to.
No, absolutely. I'm happy to. Firstly, just go back to the other point on education, Browning. I don't know the answer to this one, and it may be that I'm actually putting a request out to the attendees here today. Is really a question about the PPP Colleges of Excellence program in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, you may or may not know, actually invites international institutions in to operate schools for a period of time, higher education schools primarily. I'm not aware that they have looked to solar installation as one of the course modules or designing a course around solar installation, but I think that PPP scheme, hand in hand with the renewable energy program, may be a great way of training young Saudis and bringing them into the solar market. As to the question about what we should expect with a program, I think at this stage there isn't a program. We don't know what is being offered. Saudi Arabian electricity generation is, for the most part, a monopoly. There are some exceptions to that. There are some joint ventures, SEC and Aramco, SEC and the Southern Water Conversion Company. spring to mind. But at this stage, there is no way for an international company to come into Saudi Arabia and take a plot of land on a 25-year ground lease, design a project, and then pitch it to Aramco or SEC or KCare. The KCare white paper really contemplated that process in the future, but we're not there yet. I know that some companies have even gone so far as to try to lock in pieces of land for when that program comes about. I guess it's some way away now, but I guess with the announcements that there are going to be projects in the near future, which I'd like to think will be opportunistic projects that will kickstart an industry, then at some point in the future there will be that kind of feed-in tariff sort of model that will allow people to go away, source sites, and then hook into a grid through a feed-in tariff that they'd pitched projects to a procuring authority. But no, at this stage you can't do that.
Okay. One of the questions maybe you can answer is they ask, an individual asking it, does KSA have an open power exchange where solar energy could be sold?
Not at this moment in time. We had a conference last week with ECRA, the regulator. Saudi Arabia is considering an unbundling of Saudi Electricity Company, which is essentially monopoly electricity provider and the largest utilities company in the region. As part of that, the long-term plan is that there will be an electricity exchange that will allow people to generate electricity and then sell it into that market. But no, we're not there yet, and we're some way away from that. I think the electricity regulations and the changes that are going on in the market right now are very interesting to watch. Those people are keen on seeing how the wider electricity market is going to unfold. I'd encourage you to drop in on the ECRA conferences as and when they arrive. I believe the next one's going to be in September. There are people working on an unbundling of the Saudi energy market at the moment. But I'm sorry, Brian, just finally I'd say that as much as we're all very excited about renewable energy, I think there is some caution that we probably shouldn't expect too much progress on that front as far as a dispersed market where we are actually going through an unbundling of a monopoly electricity generation company, because I don't think that Saudi Arabia would want to make any grave mistakes by offering a low feed-in tariff now and agreeing PPAs for a huge volume of electricity when they're actually going through such a big process as unwinding and unbundling SEC.
Okay, this question I'm going to direct to Imtiaz, again one from the audience, but if you can keep it brief, Imtiaz, and I'm going to have a follow-up question for all panelists to answer very quickly because we're getting close to the end of our conference period here and we promised we'd keep it to our deadline. But Imtiaz, can you speak to the issue about manufacturing in Saudi Arabia? We have a number of people interested in producing solar panels in Saudi Arabia, and obviously, you know, it's a market that they're looking to create jobs, create industry. You know, you've been firsthand involved in a number of years of seeing this grow, but for companies that maybe are not involved or want to get involved in producing in Saudi Arabia equipment and materials for the market, what can you tell them about that, and what are some of the steps they should be thinking about?
First of all, the infrastructure in Saudi, most people may not realize are excellent. I mean, you have access to, if the sector is determined as the important one, which is currently is the case, you can have access to preferential utilities, which is one of the key components, natural gas and electricity, as well as the capital. I mean, one thing that comes up very often is the capital available. Yes, there is a capital everywhere, and there is, once the project is considered as the key to the sector, they can get a very preferential financing, less than 2% rate from banks such as PIF or SADF loan. So yes, it's a real, let's say, the advantages to set up a manufacturing for solar in terms of cost point of view. Now, in terms of market point of view, of course, you know, the timing is the critical one. you need to get the visibility, the absolute visibility of where the market is heading. I mean, you can't just set up a manufacturing plant in Saudi if there is no clarity on the type of that's an agreement that government will put in place in terms of the offtake. So this is the one thing that is hindering the development of manufacturing. Though some of them, some of the companies, they did set up the manufacturing plant in Saudi. They're going ahead with that with a leap of faith that the market will pick up, and I believe so too. But my advice would be just to, like Keith, let's see in the coming months what type of announcement could be made, so that it will give them, let's say, strong footing on the both on the capacity side as well as the bankability side of their projects.
Okay, thank you, Imtiaz. Okay, well, last I would like to ask a question to all the panelists, and for Tom, I'll run through the list. If Jigar, you're still on the line, I'd like for you to comment as well. But you know, looking ahead in the next 12 months, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. This is like one of these talk shows, but on the solar industry and your perspective for Saudi Arabia. And maybe tell me what you think will be a key event or an event that you see happening in the next 12. I'll give you 12 to 18 months in the Saudi market. So if Jigar, you're still on the line, maybe you can give us a comment.
Sure. No, look, I think the key to the Saudi Arabian growth is to get a number of players who are executing side deals on a distributed generation basis. I think if you get a number of people who decide to put 500 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts on their rooftop in a warehouse where the customer itself is buying the panels or buying the power, what you will find is it will completely change the point of view of Saudi Aramco and the Saudi Electric Company as to how fast they actually have to move. And I do think that there are a number of local Saudi companies who are considering, such a bold step.
Okay. So, Jigar, that's a bit of the SunEdison model that seemed to work when you looked at your Walmart and Staples and that story. That might work as well. Aaron, what is your feeling? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, and it's something you might see as a highlight going forward, or a negative. Feel free to be as open as you want.
Sure. So I actually agree with Jigar. I think that what's going to really accelerate the market, or what's going to be an exciting indicator, is if there's this general move away from the central plant mindset. Let's go put an RFP out for a large project. So whether it's individuals saying, hey, there's some value here, and sort of doing an end around and going after small projects, or if it's KACARE coming back and saying, hey, let's do a feed-in tariff for projects to allow the smaller developers, the smaller projects to make sense economically. I think those will be exciting indicators of some takeoff of the market.
Okay, good. All right, Imtiaz, can you give us a quick summary?
I think it's pretty much covered. I mean, if the people take the responsibility of their own, which will work the best. If there are rooftops and few buildings, which already started. If there have small firms, small to SMEs, are using panels on their site to generate powers, it will definitely kickstart. In the midterm, I would say it's more of a thumbs up for my side, because I do believe the amount of capacity, the amount of energy that put in place in Saudi, not to mention a number of JVs between international and local companies has created over the last couple of years to push the agenda forward. I do believe that there will be a wind of change, or I would say a change of sun in the coming months, and I do believe that we will start to see some traction late this year to early next year in Kingdom.
Thank you. Keith, your comment, please.
I'm also a thumbs up on the Saudi solar industry in the next 12-18 months, but for a different reason. I would love there to be a feed-in tariff announcement and for us all to go away and get projects underway. What I think is more likely, and which I think will actually be sufficient to develop a renewable energy industry in Saudi Arabia, is if there is a central planning announcement that there are a dozen projects where it is sound commercial sense to use renewable energy rather than a fossil fuel solution. Remember, 5 years ago or so, we had that down at Farasan Island.
Okay, good. Abdullah?
I think we will see new faces in the game. Some people will leave, some new people will be appointed. I also see a change in the business model of solar, but definitely for the next 6 to 12 months, it's really hard to predict, but definitely after that, it's thumbs up for me. Projects will continue to will take place, and it's just a matter of the business model. I see IPPs have a larger potential of getting involved. And so overall, the next few months is really hard to predict, but nothing may happen. But definitely in 2015, 2016, I see a strong, definite growth.
Well, thank you all. I want to thank everyone for their participation, but if I do just a quick summary of that, it seems like we have more than 50% believing it's sort of a thumbs-up opportunity, so it's probably the reverse of what our audience is doing, and hopefully this webinar has given you a little bit more insight, and if you'd like to participate in our upcoming events, I think participating in our trade mission or our conference, if you go to the website, you can get a lot more information about the conference or the trade mission. And I would encourage those of you who have not been to the market, this is a great opportunity to come in a very short period of time, get a very strong overview and insights into the market. And those of you who are in the market, you can get I think, network and meet some new people. But I also want to thank Aaron, Imtiaz, Keith, Abdullah, and Solarplaza for putting together a great event. And finally, Jigar Shah. Thank you, Jigar, for taking time today and participating in this event, and your comments are always appreciated, and I'm glad to see you're positive on the market as well. So with that, I'll pass it over to Tom, and we'll close out the webinar.
Thanks, Browning. Thanks also for moderating the panel discussion. Thanks to all the panelists and especially Jigar as well. It was an interesting session. I wanted to highlight a couple of things. The slides and recordings will be available afterwards. There's a link of the website and my email address here. Don't hesitate to contact me. And I mean, there is more information to find on the event. Also, the Desert Solar Conference. The trade mission takes from 14 to 18 September. And we will arrange everything basically for you. So step in if you're interested to really dive into the market. And for the ones that already participate in the market, especially for the Saudis, we have a conference from 17 to 18 September, which will be accessible for local companies as well. So it would be great to meet you all there to help to develop this market. Questions that we have not addressed and are asked will be answered. At least we will try to get back to you by email. Don't hesitate to send any question that you still have for one of the panelists. We can address them to them and answer them for you. I want also especially to thank the sponsors of this event that we have already, which are First Solar, Tokyo Electron, Dar Solar, and Bonfiglioli. Of course, our partner SASIA and Africom. It's going to be an interesting event. Thanks for being here at least, and hope to see you all back in September, and I wish you a great day for now, wherever you are. Thanks again, and hope to see you in September. Best regards. Tom.